Here we are. Hello, friend. Happy
Hello.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Best
So,
way to wrap a day.
yes, how fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening. I know you have 3 busy boys
That you
and
will
a
likely
husband.
hear in the background. Yes.
So I'm so thankful that you were willing to spend the evening for just an hour with me, telling your story, chatting. Our conversations are always so good and, always fruitful. So I'm excited to dig into your story tonight. I'm going to give it a minute or two for people to hop on and start watching. So yeah, this is the Courageous Love podcast. This is episode number 3. And I've said in the other 2, so when I was praying about this podcast, like the downloads that I was getting of who was supposed to be on here and in what order and all of that, it was just so crystal clear. So booking these and scheduling these have been really easy because I already knew in my heart who it was supposed to be. Timing changes sometimes, but imposter syndrome is something that has come up in conversation over the last several weeks. And so I thought, well, let's get Lindsay on. Let's have this conversation because you have a great story around that. But before we hop in, I want to share a little bit about my beautiful friend. Lindsay is so passionate about women leaders. She's passionate about content marketing, elevating her people. She is this incredible soft place to land when times get tough, and a great friend of mine. And did I mention that you are a big freaking deal? You are a twin mom like me. And what is so interesting to me is that we met through the Rise and Thrive experience. We were both participants in season 1. And Rebecca Fleetwood Hessian just knows how to bring it when it comes to connection, because who knew that we were right underneath each other's noses the entire time?
Yeah. Like our kids go to school together and we live like right now as we record this, we're like blocks away from each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And our friends were friends.
Yeah.
Our kids were friends before we were.
Yeah.
Which I think is magnificent. I think that's so cool. So I'm excited to chat with you tonight. Lindsay, before we go into talking about imposter syndrome, I would love for you to share, you are the CEO of Casted. You are an amazing woman doing fantastic things in the B2B marketing podcast community. And so I want you to share with our viewers a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I'm a born and raised marketer, right? So my entire career was in B2B marketing. I'm one of the weirdos that went to school for it. Got a master's degree in marketing. Like I am a nerd through and through. I don't have a fun story about like, oh, I was doing this and I just ended up in marketing, like marketing. So I've seen B2B marketing from every angle over the last 15, 20 years. Agency work, corporate work, small company work, having my own consulting agency. I've seen it from every angle. And prior to starting Casted, I was VP of global brand and content for a large enterprise SaaS company. And there I was brought in to grow the brand through content. And the best way to do that, the best way I've always known to do that is to make it more human, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like, okay, well, part of that, this was 2016 when I started there. So it was like podcasting. I was a big fan of podcasts. I got a lot out of it for my career. And I was like, we should have one of these. We should talk to subject matter experts, capture their voices, and use that to fuel our content. Unbeknownst to me, that was incredibly difficult to do. There was no software that existed for everything that exists for, hobbyists or somebody that's going to do a show on their own and attempting to grow an audience and perhaps monetize it. Cool. There's lots there, but there was nothing for like an enterprise marketing team to create a podcast, audio and video, and use it to fuel their content marketing efforts. I could not believe it. It just shocked me that was a thing. And so long story short, I set out to be the change I wanted to see. I joined up with 2 co-founders, one who could build the thing and one who could sell the thing. And, I had the vision for the thing. And together, that was a little over 2 years ago. And here we are. We're a software platform. So we're a software company that makes a marketing platform for B2B marketers to help them harness the power of podcasting and audio and video content to really fuel all of their sales and marketing efforts and then measure its impact on the brand and the revenue that they're driving. So
I love that. You were so visionary. You were into podcasting before podcasting was a thing.
Before it was cool. Like
Yeah.
I was definitely like the nerd that was listening to podcasts in the car. Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, but that's exciting because everyone's into podcasting these days. People are into personal growth and development. They want to hear, my kids listen to crime podcasts and they listen to, all kinds of like mystery, like there's just so many different ones out there. So that's why I think what you're doing is really cool because look, what I've learned from doing a podcast, it's not just about the podcast.
Yeah.
Like I record it, we have this great, conversation, but you've got to brand it and you've got to chop it up into little pieces and make it content and put your brand out there. And you could be so creative. I don't have capacity to be that kind of creative. So you hire somebody to do all that, but that's where you come into play, right? Because for businesses, that's what makes them stand out. That's what makes them different.
Yeah, it's the human connection. Our friend Rebecca, business is human. It's true, and humans have this human need for connection, right? Which makes that a business need. It's a basic human need, therefore it's a business need if you want to be successful. And podcasts are conversations that help establish that connection. When people listen in on or watch a conversation between two other people, they innately feel more connected to them. They feel more trusting. They feel like there's a relationship there. And when you represent a business and when it's authentic, those people feel more connected to that brand and more likely to trust and work with that brand. And that's what marketing's all about, is establishing and building trust. And so it's no wonder that content like this is the future of marketing for B2B companies. It just makes sense.
Absolutely. So let's rewind a little bit because I don't think that you set out to be a CEO in your transition from your job previously to where you are today. Share with the audience a little bit about how that transition happened.
Yeah. So like I said, I had this realization of like, hey, we're trying to do this thing and there's nothing to support me or my team or, help us do it or measure it. And so I had an opportunity to start this company by becoming part of the High Alpha Venture Studio. So here in Indianapolis, some might be familiar with it, but Scott Dorsey, who was founder of ExactTarget, grew that, went public, it was acquired by Salesforce, huge success story in marketing technology and SaaS, and especially here in Indy. He went on to start a venture studio called High Alpha. They start and fund and invest in SaaS startups in particular to help them to grow. And so he reached out to me and said, hey, you have a podcast. Like we're noticing some activity and some buzz around B2B podcasting. I'd love to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, if we're going to talk, it's about so much more than B2B podcasting. Like there's such a huge need here because truly it's not about, hey, B2B podcasters need a thing. It's marketing needs a new approach. There needs to be a new way. So that conversation turned into, okay, let's, what if this is a business opportunity? What if we do this thing? And I said, okay, this isn't happening without me. I couldn't imagine someone else doing it. First of all, I couldn't imagine this not existing. I couldn't imagine what is now casted not existing. And two, I couldn't imagine somebody else doing it. Like it would break my heart if somebody else did it. And and of course they would get it wrong because, I could see the way it was supposed to be. And so so that was the opportunity that I jumped into without really looking. So
yeah. So your vision's coming to life. You're doing all these things. I can remember, and I shared this story with you before we got started, but I can remember in our Rise and Thrive experience sitting around the big round table. And you were like, guys, I have to tell you something. And we were like, oh, what is it? We were like so enthralled. And you were like, I think that I'm experiencing imposter syndrome. And we were like, no way. Not you, because we see you, right? Like we see all the amazing things that you're doing. We can see all the greatness that you're putting out into the B2B content marketing world, but it's really hard for us to see that in ourselves oftentimes. And so that's why I think it's important for us to be surrounded by people who allow for us to have our reflection back to us. Yeah. But what was that like? And how did you know that that's what you were experiencing?
Well, listen, I think I have experienced it my whole life. Like it's not even, from this role. And what's funny is that the whole reason I even met Rebecca and therefore you and the whole Rise and Thrive group is because of the term imposter syndrome. So I had been introduced to it by, I think, Brene Brown, who is my best friend, who she just doesn't know it yet, but she is. I had read about it or heard it, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is a thing. Like feeling like you're, in this situation because, of luck or nobody knows who you really are. And like you accidentally ended up in this good situation and just wait till people find out that you don't actually belong here or something. That's imposter syndrome. And I was like, okay, I can resonate with that. Like everything from, school to opportunities and groups that I was in or, job things, whatever. And I think if you're doing something that really matters to you, if you're working hard to achieve something, you're going to experience imposter syndrome. Like that is the indicator that you are pushing yourself outside the limits. And so anyway, I saw on LinkedIn something about a podcast where the topic was imposter syndrome, not unlike what we're doing right now. And it was Rebecca's podcast, Badass Women's Council podcast. And so I listened to it. She said, hey, I am here. It's part of that podcast. She mentioned being in Carmel, Indiana. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's here. So I reached out to her. We had coffee. That turned into a friendship, which turned into me going through Rise and Thrive, which led to inevitably that conversation at the table that one day. And what it's like for me is like, when you step out and you do big things and you try hard and somebody believes in you at least enough to say, okay, come do it. You're like, wait, what? And you look around, you're like, wait, but no, surely not me. Or you feel like when you step into a new role, you should magically feel different or be different or know different things. Yeah. I think we all, look at people in certain positions and it's like, oh, well, they have it all figured out. And if you're in a role and you're actively figuring it out, which is exactly what you should be doing. If you're outside your comfort zone, you're learning, you should be figuring it out. That act of figuring it out feels less than, or feels like you're not ready for, or that if people only knew that I'm figuring this out, they would think that I shouldn't be here. But truly, I mean, what I know now is that that's exactly what everyone in any big role, professional or otherwise, that's literally why they're there, is because they're really good at stepping in and figuring something out.
Yeah. I heard it called last week in a meeting that I was at, building the plane while it's in the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is super scary. And I get it, because this podcast alone is something that I struggled with imposter syndrome for a very long time. I went to school to be a television news anchor. And when I had decided that wasn't what I was going to do with my $80,000 degree, I was mortified. I'm like, what have I done? And I felt like a failure. I had set out to do this thing, but it made a choice because it didn't feel good to do that job. It didn't feel good. I did not feel aligned. And so, but I didn't have a backup plan either. So I felt like a phony in everything that I did after that, because I didn't know that wasn't what was actually meant for me anyway. And so I waited a long time to put this into action. And I love it because now it can be exactly what I want it to be. It can be emotional and vulnerable and open. And that social media, this is how we are to use it for the positive, for the good in the world. News is depressing oftentimes, and it is stressful. And I don't want to be the deliverer of those types of messages. Yeah. So, but trying to figure out what that was going to be over the last 20 years was really freaking hard.
Yeah. Well, and, the interesting thing about imposter syndrome is if you take a step outside of yourself and get out of your own head, and it's like, okay, in what situation would I not feel like an imposter? One where maybe I know everything about the role. Let's just talk like job. Okay. So let's assume this is like a professional role of imposter syndrome. I know everything there is to know. I am the best. I'm the expert. Everybody thinks I'm good at what I do, and I feel great. Like, doesn't that seem like you're actually below your capacity? Like, in what world would you not have imposter syndrome, right? And who wants to be in that space where you feel like you have it all figured out?
Right.
That doesn't sound to me like a space of learning or growing or trying, or, it just, when you really zoom out of it, you're like, the alternative doesn't sound so great.
No. And I don't know about you, but I don't feel like an imposter as a mom. So how is it that, look, it's the one thing that I know. Look, I don't think I get it right all the time, but I know that in that role, I'm doing the very best that I can with what I have. And I am creating the most positive experiences that I can with my kids. We've got 2 out of the coop, and they're doing good. So I feel like, yay. But you know what I mean? Like, that's one of the roles where I'm like, well, I don't feel like it there. So why does it translate so distinctly into my profession? And it's a hard thing to explain. And it's not something that I sit in all the time either. There are moments of like pure, like everything feels good. I can see, I love that I can grow into the role, right? That I can, it's okay for me not to have to know everything, because if I knew everything, why would I need the role? Like, why would you'd be bored.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I think, it's funny because I feel like maybe everyone experiences imposter syndrome differently. I think it's for me, it shows up as, am I enough? Like, am I good enough? Am I enough? Or, in the worst of times, it's like, certainly I'm not enough. And I have experienced that as a mom. Like, if I'm honest, like, I look at these 3 beautiful boys and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like if anyone knew how much I don't know what I'm doing, like, and what I'm feeding these children, and like how I'm just, selfish at times, and just completely clueless at times. And, you hear about how other people are parenting. Comparison, I mean, is gosh, if that doesn't exist in parenting, I don't know where it does. You see what other people are doing and you're like, oh, wait, should I be doing that? And, or like, oh, thank goodness I'm not doing that. And it's, that's, I absolutely think it shows up there too, versions of it. And I think that that's the case, personally, professionally, is how you, expectations of what something should be, and how you should be. It's should, it's enough. It's it's those two bad, very, very bad words, should and enough.
Yeah. And then shame, blame, and guilt come along with it. I can tell you where I have experienced it is being a stepmom, because
I can see that.
You got to know your role, right? And you got to know your place. And thankfully, I am good friends with my husband's ex-wife and their mom, and we have figured out how to make that work for us. And we care about one another, and we care about our kids, and we did co-parenting well later in life, but it's a big responsibility to try to not screw somebody else's kids up. So I could see where it would show up there. That definitely makes sense. So as you've gone through this journey, and somebody else, because it's a buzz, like people are really starting to like talk about it, and people are like, they almost feel bad about having it, because they feel alone in having it, because no one's talking about it. So in your intro, I wrote like breaking the silence around imposter syndrome, because it does require vulnerability and openness to feel raw against something like this. Feel that?
Yeah. No, I mean, what inevitably brought me out of it, at least most recently, like I feel good, and I feel good in my skin, and I feel good in this role, and we're doing great things. And even in the worst of times, I can't imagine like being anywhere else or anybody else being better suited for what I'm doing. And I can say that honestly, and but to get here, like, it took a lot of vulnerability. It took a lot of connection. I mean, people like you and our Rise and Thrive group, and being able to be like that day, like, guys, I think this is a thing I'm experiencing. Like, I had a really, sometimes you have hard times, like, showing up as that person, or like you feel like a fraud. Right. And the more you talk about that and you hear from others, and it's not about others being like, no, you're amazing, but just truly starting to see, one, how other people see you, truly, good, bad, and otherwise. And that other people feel that way too. Like, to see someone else that you think truly has it all together, and be like, hear them be like, oh yeah, me too. You're like, oh, so this is just a part of being human. Okay, I get it. when you can really talk about it, and then also when you can show up for other people, and you can start to turn around and being like literally this conversation we're having right now, like this is how I am actively get through it every day, or how I got through my most recent round of it. You're like, okay, like I've learned something and I have something to share with others, and that makes you so much stronger. Like just like shame, shame loves darkness and silence. Like you bring something out into the light, you talk about it, and that doesn't mean overshare. That doesn't mean like go on your biggest platform and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but to be open and to be honest and be like, I do know this, but I have some doubts about that, or like I'm actively learning in this area, or like this is a weakness. And when you have the opportunities to hire for it, or to surround yourself with people who are experts in that area, to learn from others, like when you're open and honest, like that dark place of like, I don't know this thing becomes I'm learning about this thing. And that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel good. I know that my teenage daughters struggle with perfectionism all the time, which can translate, and I'm glad that we've been able to put words to what this thing is, so that it's kind of like Brene says, it's diagnosed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what it is, and this is how we can help mend the fences.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts so young. I see tendencies in my 10-year-old, right, where she's starting to feel less than or not good enough, or taking feedback from the world around her and then making it her truth. And I'm like, no. You don't get to receive that. If is it true about you? And she's like, no. And I'm like, then we don't get to own that.
Yeah.
So, just having someone or a group of people to give you the authentic feedback that like, look, Lindsay, you may not know this in this area, but how can we help you become proficient in it? How can we help you get there if that's somewhere where you're trying to get to?
Yeah.
And it's okay that you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're getting at the root of it, of like, I think especially women in our culture, is we are literally raised by the world, if not by our parents or our caregivers, truly by the world, to believe, and this is the curse, that we can do it all. And therefore we should. We should go get the job. We should build the family. We should have all the things, and we should have all the friends, and we should have all of the outlets and all of the amazing opportunities that the world has to give us. And that we should be able to make time for it and make space for it and make everything a priority. And that's just not possible. Like, it's just not. And I mean, it is possible to have it all, but like, not because you feel like you should, like there are so many opportunities to do what you want to do and to fill up your life, but like you also need help. Like that's been a new thing for me too, like having connection, having people in your life that you can be vulnerable and authentic with, and also people that you can say, can you take this for me? Yeah. I need help with this. And I don't think that we're raised to believe that. And so I think with that comes, you should be this way. You should not, like, you should do all these things, and you should be this version of yourself. And truly it's filled up with so much stuff and so much of how you should be, that who you really are gets pushed away. And you need that connection. You need those, like, you need, not nice to have, like, you absolutely need connections, like authentic connections and friendships and relationships with people that can say, like, look, you need to put some stuff down, or like, that's not yours, put it down. That's, that thing, like you said, that you don't get to receive that. That's not, that's not true. We don't do that. And otherwise, like, isn't it insane that we believe the things that the world tells us, and we don't believe the things that the people who know us best, including ourselves, do? It's
crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I think that it's interesting that you say about authentic friendship, because the other part, like this whole podcast exists because I feel like you have to be a friend to yourself. You get to courageously love yourself before you love others. And we are so outward focused all the time. We are super women. We are doing all the things. And you're right. We're kind of like not able to ask for help because we got this.
Yeah. And we've been told to do it that way.
Right. Yeah. But we raise our children in a community. That's the point. Right? It literally takes a village. And when I ask somebody for help, I'm all about gifts and talents. I allow for somebody else to utilize who they are and who they were meant to be. And I don't have to own it and be everything to everyone. Yep. That has been such a huge growth thing for me over the last 5 years, because but my no is somebody else's enthusiastic yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a new one for me. And actually it was, speaking of parenting, when my kids first got into school, my mom, who was a teacher, she was like, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these things, and there's PTO, and there's volunteering, and there's room moms. And she was like, listen, she was like, don't do it. Don't. She's like, don't even think about it. Don't say you might. Don't ever do it. She's like, one, I know you, and I know you don't actually want to do it. And two, there are other people who do. She said, there are moms and dads and grandparents and aunts and uncles and neighbors that want that opportunity, that want to lead PTO, that want to lead the Boy Scouts, that want to be the room parent. Like, don't. She's like, because you are actively stealing that opportunity for someone else if you're doing it. And I was like, okay, like I had to hear it that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, no, it's okay. Don't feel like you have to do everything. It's like, no, don't do it.
Right.
Like you're robbing someone else of that opportunity who actually wants it. Because think about all the things that you want to do. And if somebody was kind of like nonchalantly, because they felt like they had to, already doing this exact same podcast, like with the same name and everything, and like somehow like scooting you out of the way, like this is your thing. Mm-hmm. And they were like, like,
yeah,
that would be
halfway in. We don't do things halfway in. No. It should be an enthusiastic yes. And not feeling guilty about the no. Yeah. Because I struggled with that for so many years. Part of my imposter syndrome was I didn't want people to know that I didn't have it all together and that I couldn't do all the things, because that was like my MO. My tagline was like, she's like Superwoman. I'm not exactly sure how she does all the things. And I still get it sometimes. And I'm like, I don't know. And if you talk to my friend Jacqueline Martinez, she's like, it's part of your human design. You can go from morning until night with so much energy, go. But your goal every day is to drain it out of you. That's how you can get things done. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'm just one of those people. She's like, it's okay. And you don't have to feel bad when people say that to you. They're comparing themselves to the amount of energy that you have and the things that you can get done. And they shouldn't be comparing. And I'm like, oh.
Can you say that to me every day, please?
Yes.
Yeah. It's true.
Yes. Please say that to me. Mm-hmm. So speaking of taglines, through Rise and Thrive, like I have to share this story because it is so freaking cool. You got a tattoo of your tagline. Like it came. Tell us how it came to be.
Well, they're kind of related. So it says, it's just yes, which, for me, it's a faith thing. Like, we all hear nudging, whether it's, it's for you, it's God, or if it's, the universe. But for me, when I feel God talking to me, it's really easy to be like, yeah, well, okay. And, or like, yeah, but what if, and, there was a season, and it was actually during Rise and Thrive, that it was like, no, yes, period. And, it's just a reminder to, like if you feel that calling, it's for a reason. And it's, you're doing yourself and the world a disservice if you say yeah, but, or no, or maybe later. So there's that, which actually kind of rolls up to the one that kind of descended upon me that I talked about at Rise and Thrive, which is boldly be yourself. And that's this imposter syndrome thing. Like I spent my whole life, in retrospective, trying to be who everybody else told me I should be, which is not unique. That's the way a lot of us live our lives. I think especially women, but absolutely men too. It's like, we get feedback about not how we're doing things, or not how our job or performance or how we did something could be better, but about who we are. Like you're too, things that I've heard, and I know you have too. It's like, you're too nice. You're too aggressive. You're too tall. You're too young. You're too old. You're too assertive. You're too sweet. You don't smile enough. Like all these things that are about, first of all, obviously they're very contradictory. Second of all, it's about who I am as a person. Like, right. And
you're not funny.
Yeah, you're not funny, right? Yes, I am. Gosh darn it. And so we receive those things. Like, and then also about you're not a good writer. You're not a good speaker. you're not, you're not that great at this and this, like both of those things, like you're not the best writer. You're okay at speaking. And like, that's like what I do now. And, it's when we take feedback as feedback, like, hey, you could be better at doing something, that makes us stronger. But when you internalize feedback about who you are and turn it into who you therefore are, who you need to be, I frankly was just real confused. I was like, well, okay, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, apparently I'm too nice, but also not very nice. And I'm all these things. I need to be more aggressive, but also I'm too aggressive. I need to stand up for what I need to like push harder, but also I'm pushing too hard. Like, I just got so confused. And it was New Year's Eve, I think, going into 2018 or 2017, sometime around then. And it was just something about it. It was like, boldly be yourself. And I was just done. And I was like, I'm going to be me. I think that came with a certain amount of confidence of like, some of it comes with age, unfortunately. And so maybe things like this will change that for younger people than I was when I was probably like 35 at the time. It was like, I am done. And I gotten to where I am. There's certain things that are not going to change. There's certain things that are going to grow, but I like who I am. And I'm like, I realize that the common thread, again, this is not unique to me. Like, everyone needs to hear this. Like, the common thread of all of the successes that you've had in your life is you, right? It was me. Like, I was like, oh, I did all these things. And I was like, okay, so I'm just going to be me. And from then on, like, good things happened. Like that next year, I started the podcast at Amarsis. I had the confidence to go out and be like, this is a thing that needs to happen. I raised my hand and talked to Rebecca. I met all of you, which helped me see that, my next step was going to be something kind of big and different. And then this opportunity to start Casted happened. And I truly believe that a lot of the success that I am having and that Cass is having is because we, not just me, but like we as a company, are very authentic. We are who we are. And it's a beautiful thing.
It is so beautiful. I love that you stood into your power of boldly being yourself, because guess what? Then you're the invitation for other people to boldly be themselves. And I resonate so much with what you said, that I heard that I was too soft and that it was too emotional and that I was too vulnerable and too open, just weak. What I heard out of that was like, you're weak. So then you overcompensate by being strong and putting up all these, facades and masking up and shielding up. And that's not my gift.
Right.
My gifts are in vulnerability and openness. I can sit down and start having a conversation with someone, and then they just start vomiting. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's that gift at work again, because it's a safe space, right?
Yeah.
So I want to share with the audience, because courageous love came from you and several of the girls at Rise and Thrive. Do you remember?
I do.
We're at dinner. I'm actually whining about the fact that I'm like, I didn't get my theme out of Rise and Thrive. That's a bummer. I really want. And you looked at me and said, Amber, when I think of you, you are nothing but courage and love. And immediately I was like, give me a napkin. And I saw it in the form of a cross, with courage down and love across.
Mm-hmm.
It was the birth. I know I'm a little emotional. It was the birth of this. It was the thing, that it was this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was I boldly stood into who I was born to be, so that I could impact the world through communication, through stories like Rebecca always talks about, through being able to put somebody else on a platform and say, you're not alone, and digging into these stories about who you are, what you were meant to be, and your core values and what matters.
Yeah.
So I have to thank you for encouraging me and dealing with me whining at the time.
No, but that's the thing. Like, that's the thing, is you need the people around you to simply listen. For lots of reasons, to care for and to love and to hold you up. But like, one of the reasons you need it is a mirror. Like, that was not from me. That was me just being like, mirror, like, I see, like, I've gotten to know you, so I see in you. It's so obvious to me, like the words that are like, it's your aura, it's like courage and love. Like it was just truly just me being a mirror, all of us being a mirror to you, and that's what authentic, real relationship and community and connection does. And I mean, I've shared this with you. Like I grew up not really valuing that. Like to me, connections and friendships were a luxury. It was like, well, go do the work and then maybe you get to play. And friendships were like play, auxiliary, fun, friend, like, and it wasn't until, recent years that I realized just how wrong that was and how deeply wrong that is, and how to live, you need connection, and you need people around you to help you get through imposter syndrome and to help you to see who you really are and to be like, no, you're not all of those things about you that you're hearing from others. Parts of them are true, parts of them are garbage, but the ones that are true, you have to look at them through the way that other people who actually know you and love you see you. Because it's like, if someone is soft and kind and nice and like all those things, that's not weak. That is authentic and encouraging of vulnerability, which is the gift that you bring to shows like this. Like, I mean, if you were some other person who is beautiful, but like super aggressive and hard edge and all these things, like they wouldn't be a fit for this show. They would be a beautiful fit for something else. And so that's why it's so important. Like we're not all supposed to be the same. We're supposed to be our authentic selves. And we need people around us to help us see and appreciate it and channel it in the right direction.
Yes. And we need to do that. We need to encourage our youth to be doing that too. I'm like preaching it like no other, that we have to be teaching from a young age all of these things, the values. This is who you are, your authentic self. You get to be this person. And I can't figure out why they don't teach it in college, because it's the thing literally that allows for you to decide what your future is going to look like. You have to know what you're good at. You have to know your innate gifts and talents in order to figure that out. And I, like you said, some of it takes age and experience and wisdom. But I also think that if you build a level of awareness early on, then they start looking for it sooner.
Yeah.
And they're starting to resonate with, I keep getting the feedback that that I bring a lot of energy to a room, or that I'm very giving, or that, whatever it is, like, I keep getting that feedback. That's probably just a part of who I was made to be. And then owning it. Then imposter syndrome doesn't seem so scary or such a big deal, because you just step into, that's who I am. And that's what I bring in any situation. Not necessarily just at work or just at home, in all the places that you go.
Right. And then you have the tools to step into it, because it's like, okay, I'm in this new situation. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I know that I am this. Like I am, fill in your adjectives here. And that's how I'm going to bring this. And I know that I can lean into these things authentically and genuinely and easily as I'm learning these skills, right? And I don't have to be anyone else, because I am this, doing this.
Thankfully, the fact that we don't have to be somebody else. Like, I want to say that again, because comparison is the thief of joy. Look, I think you're amazing and you're doing wonderful things. And I am just so blessed to know you and have you as a part of my tribe and my circle and my confidant. But I don't want to be Lindsay. And I don't hurt your feelings when I say that. Look, the reason we're friends is because there are parts of us who coincide, right? There are parts of us that overlap and we share. And we are completely different women. And because I'm not a CEO doesn't mean that I'm any less than, right?
Yeah.
Because you are a CEO doesn't mean that you're a she-EO or any of those other crazy things that people say to downplay a woman being a CEO. I'm a huge advocate. I love it. And I'm so excited that you stand in that gap. Us women striving to get there, or not striving. Rebecca would be mad if I said that. Thriving to get there.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. We have that whole other conversation about the labels and the qualifiers, but they do that. I mean, my goodness, if you want to talk about like sprinkling a little imposter syndrome everywhere you go, like put a cute label on someone's title that they've earned. And that's personally or professionally, fathers, like calling them like, mommy daycare or like daddy daycare or something. No, they're a dad. Like they're not babysitting. they're taking care of the children. And like, same
Right.
thing with, name any role. Like, why does it have to be, why is there a label? Why is it a CEO or a mompreneur or a female founder, unless you're truly describing the person who is a founder and a female, because that's relevant to the context. Like, cute labels are like gasoline on the fire of imposter syndrome.
That's good.
It's not doing anything good for anybody.
Well, and you'll fall to it too. I heard myself and I was corrected. So, I'm in seminary going to be a pastor of what I don't know yet, but we'll see. And I said, I would say female pastor. And a good friend of mine was like, why can't you just be a pastor? Like, right. She's like, there is no he, she, you just get to be. And I was like, thank you for correcting, because I was so unaware that I was saying it, that I was fueling my own fire of my own, because it was my own deflection of that, like my feeling.
Yeah.
I
and
felt
that's the thing.
Not good enough.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes it's helpful. Like, sometimes if it's drawing attention to the fact that there's like, it's underrepresented, or like, hey, this is, or this is part of my story. Like, for sure. I'm not saying like, don't like take all the labels away always, but like when it's a qualifier, or if it's putting somebody in a box because it's like, oh, well, you're a pastor, but it's cute, so because you're a woman pastor. Or it's like, you're a CEO, which is really lovely because you're a woman CEO, you're a female CEO. Like, why? What's the point? It doesn't do it good for anyone. So cut it out, everybody.
Cut it out. Got to stop it. So the last thing, just to put a bow on this, for someone that is going through imposter syndrome, what would you tell them to do, Lindsay? Like, how can we help them pull out of this situation that they're in, the feeling that they're in, and step back into, who they were made to be?
Connection. I think if we all think about someone you know and love, right? And respect. It doesn't have to be like the best person in your life. Just right now, think about someone you know and love and respect. If you knew that they were suffering in silence by thinking that they were less than, they weren't good enough, that everybody just, if they were to find out, would think they were a fraud, wouldn't that break your heart? Now, what if that person came to you and said, I'm dealing with some stuff. I just don't, like, I feel like if everybody found out how I feel inside, or that I like don't know what I'm doing in this thing that I'm doing, everything would fall apart. Like, what would you say? You would scoop them up and you would be like, not true. You're amazing. Let's talk about why. You'd get through it together. And if that's true for this person that you care about, why isn't it true for you? So like, reach out and tell someone like that you're struggling. And I guarantee they will meet you with, I've been there and you're amazing. And like, let's get through it. And it's absolutely, it's not negotiable. The only way through it is connection.
That's so great. And you know what? You are amazing, Lindsay. You're are such an inspiration. Thank you for being open. I just had a moment of Schitt's Creek. You just like looked so good. So good. Thank you so much for being on here today and sharing your story and being open and vulnerable with our audience. I know that there are people on here that will take pieces of your story and heal, the parts of themselves that are going through this today, because it's running rampant. And I think that COVID has even more so dug it out of us. But I think the good part of it is now we're seeing that there is something we can do about it. And when we had lack of connection, now we appreciate the connection and we're willing to go be brave and to be bold and courageous about fixing these things and getting away from this imposter syndrome thing, because it's not good for us.
It's not. And everyone has experienced it, whether they realize it or not. And so thank you for calling it to light, because that's the way through.
Even men.
Yeah. Yes.
Even men. So this is not just a strictly
this is not a girl thing.
No. Nope. I watch my husband go through it all the time. He'd never call it that. He wouldn't vulnerably be like, yeah, I'm going through that right now. But you question when you run into hard times. Yeah. And so
strong men in my life actually recently, it's come up. And so, this is absolutely not a girl thing.
No, Absolutely not. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your evening, sister. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that joined us tonight. Lindsay, this has been incredible. You are incredible. And all of our audience members, we just appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in to the Courageous Love podcast. And we will see you in a couple weeks.